Hi folks, hello. It's an odd place to start, but I got no option but to, because I'm about to both literally and metaphorically. She had turned herself into a great snake-like monstrosity. For her, it had been an accident. She subjected herself to an experimental procedure after being severely injured in a fire. The treatment saved her life, but also transformed her. And she was apparently kept her sanity. Her mind, despite the transformation, never ending up like Richard did. Richard, who ended up a mindless beast for all the time during all the time he was a monster. He was a monster. Dr. Phantom continued her experiments as a monster, and was responsible, responsible for many extremely unethical and illegal experiments. Are unethical experiments illegal by default? I'm not sure. I think there is a difference. Phantom was not prosecuted for these actions. Not prosecuted for what she did. She offered her services to the USZ after the war, and her research was proved useful. And her research proved useful. A lot of it was used to prosecute and convict a number of jade scientists who unlike Dr. Phantom, did not get a deal and ended up sentenced to death. Phantom was also transformed. Also did battle Dominique Vert shortly before the war's end. And Dominique transformed her back into human form. So in the present, Phantom was no monster in the physical sense. She was completely human, but apparently didn't need the same regular treatment, injections that Dr. Richard Ward did. They're both scientists. I used Richard and Rupert in several stories. The first one of them was like a die-hard terrorist leader type. I forget which one. And the other times they were they were like occultists, one of them. I don't think they were together in the same story. Were they? I'm not sure. Yeah. This is pretty ironic. Ironic is Dr. Phantom had no interest. By the end of the war, had no interest in curing herself of her transformation. She preferred it to her weak human form. She had not made any attempt to change herself back into what she had once been. She was still a scientist employed by the Jade, by the U.S. government, working nowhere near the MCRF. Dr. Phantom's daughter, going by the alias Tabish Rusha, was let's see, how old was she? 20? And by alias Tabish Rusha was a researcher at the facility. Her birth name had been Antoinette Phantom. And she had been born in 0040, making her 17 in the present. She was like a double. Antoinette's mother, Bridget, had been only 17 herself when she gave birth to her daughter. She then sent her daughter away. The daughter was raised by other members of Bridget's family, including her aunt, her sister, her older sister. They did not have much interaction with each other till the girl was 10 in the year after the Jade War's end. Antoinette was despite Antoinette's youth, she was one of the ranking scientists at the facility and had 3 doctorates. She also seemed to lack the wickedness of her infamous mother. Antoinette was a young beauty with short black hair, big brown eyes, lovely oval face, milk pale skin, curvaceous form. She looked like a double of her own mother in some areas, in most ways, except for the shorter hair. Antoinette also dressed in a more casual and less masculine style than her mother, preferring dresses dresses and heels to suits and ties. There were rumors of a secret relationship between Antoinette and Richard Ward, which would have been quite ironic considering the wickedness. Considering how Richard was experimented on so ruthlessly by Antoinette's mother, Bridget. Let's see. There were several other high-profile Richard Ward was not at the meeting, and he usually didn't attend them. He spent most of his time in his lab, or living quarters. He was nicknamed the Hermit of the facility, though there were plenty of reclusive types there. Also at the meeting was Dr. Null Hawk. Dr. Null Hawk Bora, who was half Arcness, half Palestone. He was a member of the zucchini subculture of the Arcness. Probably the rarest subculture of the known world. Only a few hundred members, involving 6 families back in the USZ. The zucchini dressed like Arcness, but wore the tanks and mass associated with the Pale Stones. The zucchini were descended from Arcness settlers at Palestone. Most Palestone settlers had been white, Chromish people. The Arcness settlers were as exotic, quite exotic by comparison. Maybe Chromish, British, would be exotic to other people. I can't see through the eyes of, like, say, someone from India or Pakistan or China. They think we're very exotic, us Americans. There was also Dr. Akira Yamamoto, a scientist, a Japanese scientist. There was a rumor going around that Richard's treatments were failing on their own, and he was regressing back to a reptilian form despite the injections. Rupert knew this wasn't the case, and anytime this wasn't the case, Richard was just a recluse in spirit. Japanese scientist who's a young lady scientist from Japan who was friends with Dr. Tebish Russia, the only researcher here of the same age as her, though Haruka was 18 in 0058. 57. Is this 58 or 57? As for the rumored relationship, Antoinette, yeah, good, I thought I got that wrong. I'll check the first part for the year 1957. As for a rumored relationship, Rupert didn't know. Rumored relationship with Antoinette didn't know. It would be obscene to Rupert in a lot of ways, including the age gap. How old are you, Richard? Over 20 age, yeah. Richard was over 20 years her senior. And it might be illegal. I think people were less concerned about that stuff back then. I mean, you know, someone going out with someone who was, like a grown man going out with someone who was 16 or 17. I think, you know, attitudes have changed a lot since then, but I don't know what people said or did back then. I don't know if it was illegal or just considered obscene. No. Her father was some powerful mob leader back in her native Japan. She had distanced herself from him, and he had apparently disowned her in reply. She had 3 brothers and sisters, all of whom were criminals. She was the youngest daughter of the family, and her mother was deceased, having died a few years after her birth. Hakura was tall and pale. Let's see, Phantom. Was tall and pale, with lovely long black hair and elegant features. Her almond eyes were a lovely caramel shade of brown. She most often had her hair tied back in a bun, and she tended to wear Western clothes when in Japan, when in the West. The J continent was not the West. It was. I heard someone at the door. Someone at the door I thought I heard. MJ content was not the West. This faculty was, in a way. It was mostly populated by Western people. Haruka family was wealthy, but she had been living on her own for nearly 3 years, and the money she earned as a researcher was all she had. She was quite pleased to live free, live at the facility where room and board was free. Room and board. What's the phrase? What does room and board even mean? I better sign off here, folks. I have a feeling someone's gonna knock on the door and ask me something. See you later.